The great chamber of Vareth Prime stretched for miles in every direction. Crystal towers rose from the floor like frozen flames, and light from 3 distant suns poured through walls made of living glass. 4,000 species had sent their representatives to this place. 4,000 flags hung from the ceiling. 4,000 voices filled the air with 100 different languages. Ambassador Zoreth Velkon stood at his designated platform and looked across the sea of alien faces. He had served the Galactic Concord for 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched young species take their first steps into the stars. Nothing surprised him anymore, but today his eyes kept drifting to one spot in the chamber. It was a simple platform, no different from any other. A small flag hung above it, showing a blue and green sphere against a field of black. The flag was faded. Dust covered the platform's surface. Earth's seat had been empty for 127 years. Zorath remembered the day the Concord first made contact with humanity. He had been a junior diplomat then, eager and full of hope. The discovery of a new intelligent species was always cause for celebration. The Concord would welcome them, teach them, guide them toward their proper place in the galactic order. The first delegation arrived in Earth's orbit in the year humans called 2089. Zoreth had not been part of that mission, but he had studied the records many times. The Concord sent 3 ships carrying diplomats, scientists, and gifts of technology. They expected to find a primitive world, barely capable of reaching its own moon. They expected gratitude and wonder. What they found was something else entirely. The humans listened politely as the Concord explained the benefits of membership. They would receive protection from hostile species. They would gain access to technologies that took other civilizations millions of years to develop. They would have a voice in galactic affairs. All they had to do was accept the Concord's guidance and follow its laws. The humans thanked the delegation for coming. They accepted the communication codes that would allow them to contact the Concord. They smiled and shook hands and said all the right words. Then they closed their doors and never called. At first, the Concord assumed humanity simply needed time. New species often felt overwhelmed by first contact. They needed years, sometimes decades, to process the reality that they were not alone in the universe. The Concord was patient. They would wait. Years passed, then decades. The empty seat gathered dust. The Concord sent follow-up missions. The humans received them with the same polite distance. Yes, they understood the offer. No, they were not ready to send a representative. Perhaps in the future, thank you for your concern. Some members of the Concord grew angry. Who were these primitives to refuse such generosity? The Harath Dominion suggested sending a military fleet to remind humanity of its proper place. The elder species counseled patience. Humanity was young and foolish. It would learn, but humanity did not learn. At least, not the lessons the Concord wanted to teach. The first troubling reports came 60 years after first contact. A Concord patrol ship encountered a human vessel in neutral space, far beyond Earth's solar system. This should have been impossible. Humanity had not been given faster-than-light technology. It had not asked for it, yet there the ship was. It's moving through space, using a drive system the patrol could not identify. More reports followed. Human traders appeared on fringe worlds offering goods that matched or exceeded Concord quality. Human engineers were hired by struggling colonies to solve problems that had defeated the galaxy's greatest minds. Human explorers mapped regions of space that the Concord had declared too dangerous to enter, and still, Earth's seat remained empty. Zorath pulled himself from his memories as the current session began. The speaker, a massive creature from the methane world of Grix, called for order. Today's agenda covered trade disputes, border conflicts, and the ongoing crisis in the Outer Arm. The usual business of holding a galaxy together. Zoreth was preparing his notes when his personal communicator buzzed. He glanced at the message and felt his blood run cold. A human merchant fleet had arrived at Vareth Prime. 12 ships, appearing without warning at the edge of the system. They were requesting landing clearance for what they called routine trade. This had never happened before. Humanity had never come to the Concord. It always kept their distance, building their own path through the stars. Why were they here now? Zoroth looked around the chamber. Other ambassadors were receiving similar messages. Confusion spread through the assembly like ripples in water. The speaker demanded to know what was happening. Zoroth stood and addressed the chamber. His voice was calm, but his heart beat fast beneath his robes. "Distinguished colleagues," he said, "it appears we have visitors. A human delegation has arrived and wishes to conduct business on Vareth Prime." Silence fell over the assembly. 4,000 species stared at Zoroth, waiting for more information. He had none to give. "What do they want?" Someone called out. "They say they wish to trade," Zoroth replied. "Nothing more." "This is an insult," the Kreth ambassador snarled. The Dominion of Kreth was one of the Concord's most powerful military forces. They did not appreciate surprises. They ignore us for a century, and now they appear at our doorstep without invitation, without warning. "Perhaps they are finally ready to join us," another voice suggested hopefully. Zoroth doubted that very much. Humanity had spent over 100 years proving they did not need the Concord. They had built their own ships, found their own worlds, and solved their own problems. They had done everything the Concord said was impossible for a species so young. No, humanity was not here to join. They were here to show the galaxy something. Zoroth just did not know what. "We should deny them entry," the Kreth ambassador declared. "Send them away. Remind them that the Concord does not accept uninvited guests." "That would be unwise," Zoroth said quietly. "We know almost nothing about humanity's true capabilities. Turning them away might be seen as an act of fear. Worse, an insult that demands response." The chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded humanity be welcomed with open arms. Others wanted them driven off by force. The elder species urged caution while the younger ones cried for action. Through it all, Zoroth stared at the empty seat with its faded flag. For 127 years, humanity had walked its own path through the darkness between stars. They had asked nothing from the galaxy and owed nothing in return. Now they were here. And Zoroth realized something that filled him with an emotion he had not felt in centuries. He was afraid. Not of what humanity might do. He was afraid of what humanity might represent. A species that had looked at the greatest civilization in galactic history and decided they did not need it. Species that had chosen the hard path of independence over the easy road of submission, and somehow, impossibly, they had succeeded. The message arrived on his communicator again. The human fleet was waiting for an answer. Zoroth took a deep breath and made his decision. "Grant them landing clearance," he said. "Let us see what humanity has become." The human ships landed on Platform 17, a massive field of polished stone reserved for visiting delegations. A crowd had gathered to watch. Its ambassadors, merchants, and ordinary citizens of Vareth Prime stood behind security barriers, craning their necks for a glimpse of the mysterious visitors. Zoroth stood at the front of the welcoming committee. Beside him were representatives from 12 senior species, each dressed in their finest ceremonial robes. They had prepared speeches of welcome. They had arranged gifts and honors. They were ready to show humanity the full glory of the Galactic Concord. The human ships looked nothing like Concord vessels. They were angular and practical, built for function rather than beauty. Their hulls were scarred from countless journeys through hostile space. These were working ships, not diplomatic transports. The main vessel's ramp lowered with a hiss of pressure. Zoroth straightened his posture and prepared his greeting. The woman who walked down the ramp was not what he expected. She was shorter than most humans he had seen in recordings, with dark hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a plain gray uniform with no medals or decorations. Her face was calm and serious, showing neither fear nor excitement. This was Captain Alara Chen, commander of the merchant carrier Boundless Horizon. Zoroth stepped forward and began his prepared speech. He spoke of friendship across the stars. He spoke of the Concord's ancient traditions of welcome. He spoke of hope for a new relationship between humanity and the galactic community. Alara listened politely. When he finished, she nodded once. "Thank you, Ambassador. That was very kind. Now, where can we set up our trade goods? We have medical supplies, refined minerals, and some agricultural technology that might interest the delegations here." Zoroth blinked. "That was all?" "Statements. No formal response to his welcome? Captain Chen, he said carefully, perhaps you would first like to address the assembly. This is a historic moment. The first time humanity has visited the Concorde's seat of power. Surely you have something to say to the gathered species of the galaxy. Ilara looked at him with something that might have been amusement. Ambassador, we are merchants, came to trade. If anyone wants to talk, they can find us at our booth. She walked past him toward the market district, her crew following behind with cargo containers. The welcoming committee stood in stunned silence. The Kreth ambassador made a sound of disgust. Insulting. Absolutely insulting. They treat us like shopkeepers. Zorath said nothing. He watched Ilara disappear into the crowd and felt something strange stirring in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Curiosity. He found the human delegation 3 hours later. They had set up in a corner of the great market, their goods displayed on simple tables. A steady stream of visitors moved past, examining human technology with wonder and suspicion. Ilara was speaking with a group of merchants from the agricultural world of Selene. She was explaining how a small device could purify contaminated soil in a matter of days. The Selene merchants looked skeptical, but interested. Zorath waited until she was free, then approached. Captain Chen, I wonder if you might answer some questions. She turned to face him. Her eyes were sharp and observant. You are the Sithrani ambassador. Zorath Velkin. I read about you on the journey here. You study us? We study everyone. Knowledge is valuable. Zorath chose his next words carefully. The Concorde has watched humanity for over a century. We have seen your ships in places they should not be. We have heard stories of human engineers performing miracles. Yet you have never asked for our help. You have never joined our community. Why? Ilara was quiet for a moment. Then she gestured for him to follow her away from the crowd. They found a quiet spot near a fountain that sang with crystalline water. Ilara sat on the edge and looked up at the alien sky. Do you know what happened on Earth before first contact? She asked. Zorath knew the basic history. Humanity had been divided into hundreds of nations. They had fought wars over resources, land, and ideas. They had nearly destroyed themselves several times.
You were...
Troubled, he said, diplomatically. Ilara laughed. It was a short, hard sound. We almost killed ourselves. Over and over again. We were cruel and stupid and selfish. We thought we were the center of the universe. She paused. Then your ships arrived, and suddenly we knew we were just one small species on one small world. There were thousands of civilizations out there, each older and more powerful than us. Your delegation offered us everything. Protection, technology, a place in the galactic order, and you refused? We refused. Ilara looked at him directly. Do you know why? Because we listened to what you were really offering. You would protect us, but we would owe you. You would give us technology, but we would depend on you. You would give us a seat, but we would follow your rules. She stood and walked to the fountain's edge. After everything we had been through, humanity made a decision. We would never put our survival in anyone else's hands. Never again. If we were going to make it in this universe, we would do it ourselves. The hard path, Zorath murmured. The only path that mattered to us. Ilara turned back to face him. For 100 years, we have worked and struggled and failed and tried again. We built our own ships from stolen knowledge and human creativity. We found our own worlds and made them home. We solved problems that your Concorde said were impossible. 200 worlds, Zorath said. We have heard the rumors. 217, actually. All outside Concorde space. All built by human hands. The weight of her words settled over Zorath like a heavy blanket. 217 worlds. Built in just over a century, without help from anyone. The Concorde took millions of years to reach 4,000 species, he said slowly. You had rules, Ilara replied. You had traditions and procedures and committees. You waited for permission that no one needed to give. She shook her head. We do not wait. We act. A commotion from the market drew their attention. The Kreth ambassador was approaching with a squad of armed soldiers. His face was twisted with anger. Human, he shouted. You will answer for your crimes. Ilara did not flinch. What crimes would those be? Your illegal expansion into sovereign space? Your theft of protected technologies? Your insult to the Galactic Concord by refusing your proper place? The Kreth ambassador's voice rose with each accusation. Earth will submit to Concord jurisdiction, or it will face the consequences. Zorath stepped forward. Ambassador, please. This is not the place for such threats. Silence, Scythrani. The dominion of Kreth will not be ignored. The ambassador turned back to Ilara. You have one standard month to send a delegation to the Concord. You will accept our laws. You will pay tribute for your expansion, or we will teach you why the galaxy fears us. Ilara looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm and steady. Humanity has never signed a treaty with the Concord. We have violated no laws that apply to us. Our worlds are outside your territory. We have harmed no one. She stepped closer to the Kreth, showing no fear of his greater size. If you want a war, you can have one. But understand this clearly. We did not survive our own worst nature just to bow to yours. The Kreth ambassador stared at her with shock and fury. No one spoke to the Dominion this way. No one dared. You will regret those words, he hissed. Maybe, Ilara said, but I doubt it. She turned her back on him and returned to her trade booth. The Kreth ambassador stormed away, his soldiers following close behind. Zorath watched him go with a growing sense of dread. The Dominion would not let this insult pass. They would gather their fleet and strike at humanity with everything they had, and Zorath had no idea if humanity was ready for what was coming. The Dominion of Kreth assembled the largest war fleet seen in 300 years. 2,000 ships gathered at the edge of human space, their weapons charged, and their crews hungry for battle. The Kreth had not lost a major conflict in over a millennium. They did not intend to start now. Commander Idris Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the human cruiser, silent thunder, and watched the enemy fleet approach. His tactical display showed the numbers clearly. 2,000 Kreth warships against 43 human defenders. The math was simple. The math was impossible, Commander, his tactical officer said quietly. They will reach New Geneva in 6 hours. Gris nodded. New Geneva was humanity's closest colony to Concord space. 3 million people lived on that world. Farmers, engineers, families with children. They were counting on him to protect them. He had 43 ships. The Kreth had enough firepower to crack a planet in half. Status of the evacuation? He asked. 60% complete. Most of the civilian transports are away, but we will not get everyone out in time. Idris closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his own family back on Earth, his wife, his 2 daughters. The small house by the sea where they had planned to retire someday. He wondered if he would ever see them again. Then he opened his eyes and got to work. All ships, this is Commander Okonkwo. Form up on my position. We are going to buy our people as much time as possible. He paused. I will not lie to you. The odds are against us. Most of us will not survive this day, but every minute we hold is another transport that escapes. Every ship we destroy is one less threat to our homes. He took a breath. Humanity has faced impossible odds before. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We crawled out of every grave the universe dug for us. The Kreth think we are weak because we are young. Let us show them what humanity does when our backs are against the wall. The fleet moved into position. 43 ships arranged in a defensive formation around the planet. It looked pathetic against the approaching storm. The Kreth fleet commander sent a final message. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make you suffer. Idris did not bother to reply. The battle began at 1400 hours. Standard time, the Kreth attacked in their traditional formation, a massive wave designed to overwhelm defenders through sheer numbers. It had worked against every enemy they had ever faced. Their ships moved forward in perfect coordination, its weapons firing in synchronized volleys, the first human countermeasure. deployed 30 seconds into the engagement. The Kreth called them ghost weapons. The humans called them cascade mines. Small devices, no larger than a person's fist, scattered throughout the approach vector. When the Kreth ships passed over them, they activated. Space itself seemed to twist and break. Localized gravitational anomalies tore through the Kreth formation like invisible fists. Ships that had been flying in perfect order suddenly found themselves pulled in different directions. Some collided with each other. Others were thrown off course. Their navigation systems. Screaming warnings. The perfect wave became chaos. The human ships struck while the Kreth were confused. They moved in ways that should have been impossible, changing direction without slowing down, spinning and firing in patterns that no organic pilot could survive. But human pilots were not entirely organic anymore. Neural links connected their minds directly to their ships. They thought, and their vessels responded. Adir's felt the silent thunder like an extension of his own body. He could sense the enemy ships around him, feel the vibrations of weapons fire, taste the electric hum of his own shields. When he wanted to turn, the ship turned. When he wanted to fire, the ship fired. It was not enough to win, but it was enough to hurt. The Kreth regrouped after the initial shock. They were warriors, trained for battle since birth. They adapted quickly, spreading their formation to avoid the remaining mines, targeting the human ships with focused fire. Human vessels began to die. The frigate Dawn's Promise was the first to fall. It was torn apart by concentrated weapons fire. Then the destroyer, Endless Sky, its shields overwhelmed by a dozen enemy ships. One by one, the human fleet shrank. But they did not run. They did not surrender. Every human ship that fell took a dozen Kreth vessels with it. Suicide runs, desperate last stands, crews fighting until their final breath. The Kreth had never seen anything like it. Their enemies usually broke and fled when the battle turned against them. Humans did not know how to flee. For hours into the battle, Idris received a message from the evacuation coordinator. The last transport had escaped. New Geneva was empty. "All ships," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Mission accomplished. The civilians are safe." He looked at his tactical display. 17 human ships remained. The Kreth still had over 500, Commander's weapons officer said. "The Prometheus is requesting permission to execute final protocol." Idris closed his eyes. The Prometheus was their largest remaining destroyer, commanded by Captain Sarah Webb. Final protocol meant one thing. Tell Sarah. Tell her it was an honor. The Prometheus broke from formation. Its crew evacuated in emergency. Pods, leaving only Captain Webb and a skeleton team aboard. The ship accelerated toward the Kreth flagship, a massive dreadnought that commanded the enemy fleet. The Kreth tried to stop it. They threw everything they had at the approaching destroyer. Weapons fire tore through its hull, ripping away armor and systems. But the Prometheus kept coming. At the last moment, Captain Webb activated the ship's main drive at full power. The Prometheus struck the Kreth, its flagship at nearly the speed of light. Both ships ceased to exist. The explosion was visible from New Geneva's surface. A new star, burning for just a moment before fading into darkness. With their flagship destroyed, the Kreth fleet faltered. Their coordination broke down. Their chain of command collapsed. Human ships pressed the advantage, striking at confused targets, driving the survivors back. When it was over, the Kreth had lost 1,847 ships. Humanity had lost 9. Commander Okonkwo stood on his bridge and looked at the wreckage floating in space. So many dead on both sides. So much destruction. And for what? Because the Kreth could not accept that some species did not want to be ruled. He composed a message to the Galactic Concord. It was short and direct. "We did not start this. We finished it. Send no more." The message spread across the galaxy in hours. Every species, every world, every corner of known space heard what had happened at New Geneva. A young species, barely a century into space travel, had broken the greatest military power in the Concord. On Verith Prime, Ambassador Zorith Velkon received the news in stunned silence. It expected humanity to fight bravely and die well. He had not expected them to win. What else had the Concord gotten wrong about these strange, stubborn creatures from the small blue world. He looked at the empty seat in the great chamber, its flag still faded, its surface still dusty. Perhaps it was time to stop waiting for humanity to fill it. Perhaps it was time to understand why they had never wanted to. The Kreth ambassador had fled Vareth Prime in disgrace. His people were demanding his execution for leading them into such a disaster. The Dominion itself was fracturing, its reputation shattered, and across the galaxy. Other species were beginning to ask dangerous questions. If humanity could stand alone, why could they not do the same? The universe was changing. Zoroth could feel it in his ancient bones. Something new was being born in the darkness between stars. He just hoped the galaxy was ready for it. The news of the Kreth defeat traveled faster than light itself. Every world in the Concord heard the story. A young species with a handful of ships had shattered the mightiest war fleet in galactic history. It should have been impossible, yet it had happened. On the agricultural world of Selak 7, a farmer named Torvin Kell heard the news while working in his fields. He stopped his labor and stared at the sky, thinking thoughts that would have been dangerous a month ago. If humanity could stand against the Concord, perhaps others could too. Selak 7 had been a client world for 3,000 years. The Concord called it partnership. Torvin's people called it something else. Their resources flowed outward to richer worlds while they scraped by on what remained. Their culture had been smoothed and shaped until it fit the Concord's expectations. Their children learned Concord history in Concord schools, forgetting the stories their grandparents once told. This was protection. This was guidance. This was the price of being part of something greater. Torvin had accepted it all his life. Now he wondered why. A month after the Kreth defeat, a human ship landed on Selak 7. Not a military vessel or a diplomatic transport, but a simple research craft carrying scientists and engineers. Their leader was a small woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had spent her life studying how different species lived and thought. She had visited dozens of worlds, learning their languages and customs. But she had not come to Selak 7 to study. She had come to help. The local Concord administrator was suspicious. "What do you want from us?" he demanded. "Nothing," Yuki replied. "We heard your harvest yields have been declining. We have some techniques that might help, if you are interested." The administrator did not trust her. Humans had just humiliated the Concord. Surely this was some kind of trick, some scheme to spread human influence. But Torvin and the other farmers were desperate. Their crops were failing. Their children were hungry. They agreed to listen. UKI did not preach or lecture. She rolled up her sleeves and worked alongside them in the fields. She showed them how to test their soil and understand what it needed. She explained irrigation methods that used less water but grew more food. She brought seeds adapted for difficult conditions, gifts from human colonies that had faced similar problems. And she asked for nothing in return. The Selaxians were confused. In their experience, nothing was free. Every gift came with obligations. Every kindness had a price. "Why are you doing this?" Torvin asked one evening as they shared a simple meal. Yuki considered the question because it is right, because you need help, and we can provide it. Because the universe does not have to be a place where the strong prey on the weak. The Concord says it protects us. The Concord takes your resources and gives you rules. That is not protection. That is control. Yuki looked at him with those kind eyes. "You deserve better." Everyone deserves the chance to grow on their own terms. Word spread across Selak 7. The human visitors were different from the Concord administrators. They worked hard. They shared freely. They treated the farmers as equals, not subjects. More importantly, their methods worked. Crop yields began to improve. Families that had faced starvation found hope. Other humans arrived over the following months. Engineers who helped repair failing water systems. Doctors who treated illnesses the Concord had ignored. Teachers who offered education without demanding conformity. The Concord administrator watched with growing alarm. He sent reports to his superiors. The humans were undermining Concord authority. They were spreading dangerous ideas. Something had to be done. But what could be done? The humans had broken no laws. They were simply helping. And the Selaxians were beginning to ask questions that no one had asked in 3,000 years. Why did they need the Concord at all? Far across the galaxy, Ambassador Zorath Velkin was asking similar questions. He had obtained permission to visit human space. It was a controversial decision. Many Concord leaders wanted nothing to do with humanity after the Kreth disaster. But Zorath needed to understand. He needed to see what humanity had built with their own hands. His ship arrived at the human colony of New Horizon, one of their oldest settlements. He expected to find military installations and weapons factories. He expected cold efficiency and rigid order. What he found was chaos. The streets of New Horizon were crowded with people arguing, laughing, and going about their daily lives. Markets sold goods from 100 different worlds. Artists painted murals on public walls. Musicians played in open squares. Children ran and played without fear. No one seemed to be in charge. There were no Concord administrators telling people where to go and what to do. Humans simply lived. Is this typical? Zorath asked his human guide, a young man named Marcus. Pretty much, Marcus replied. Every colony is a little different. We do not have a central authority like your Concord. Each world governs itself. We cooperate when we need to, and leave each other alone when we do not. But how does anything get done? How do you make decisions? Marcus shrugged. We talk, we argue, sometimes we vote. Sometimes we just try different things and see what works. He smiled at Zorath's confusion. It is messy, but it is ours. Zorath spent 3 weeks in human space. He visited 6 different worlds, each with its own character and culture. Some were highly organized, with elected councils and detailed laws. Others were loose collections of communities, barely connected except by trade. A few were experimental, trying new forms of society that had never existed before. None of them answered to anyone but themselves. Does it not frighten you? Zorath asked on his last night, sitting with a group of humans around a fire. Being alone? To protect you. An old woman laughed. Her name was Alina, and she had been born on Earth before humanity reached the stars. We have never been alone, she said. We have each other. That is enough. But the galaxy is dangerous. There are species that would destroy you if they could. Let them try. Elena's eyes were bright in the firelight. We did not survive this long by hiding behind others. We survived by facing our problems ourselves, by being too stubborn to die. She leaned forward. Ambassador, your Concord has spent millions of years trying to make the galaxy safe. But safety is not living. Safety is just not dying. We wanted more than that. Zorath returned to Veroth Prime with a mind full of new thoughts. He presented his findings to the Concord Council, describing what he had seen. Humanity is not a threat, he concluded. They do not want to conquer us or destroy us. They simply want to exist on their own terms. And they have proven they can. That is precisely the threat, the new Kreth ambassador argued. If other species see that the Concord is not necessary, they will begin to leave. Our power depends on unity. Humanity's example undermines everything we have built. Perhaps what we have built needs to be questioned, Zorath replied. The chamber fell silent. To question the Concord was close to treason, but Zorath was not the only one thinking such thoughts. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. On world after world, species that had been loyal for millennia were beginning to ask why. Why did they pay tribute? Why did they follow rules they never agreed to? Why did they need permission to grow? The Concord had stood for millions of years. Now, cracks were appearing in its foundation, and it had all started because one small species had looked at the greatest power in the galaxy and said no on Select 7. Torvin Kell harvested the best crop of his life. He looked at the sky where a human ship had first appeared, and he made a decision. His people would not be clients anymore. They would be free. 5 years passed, and the galaxy transformed. 12 species formally withdrew from the Concord, declaring their independence and beginning to build their own paths. Dozens more demanded reforms, refusing to pay tribute until their voices were heard. The ancient order that had held the galaxy together for millions of years was cracking apart. On Veroth Prime, the great chamber that once held 4,000 representatives now felt hollow. Empty seats dotted the assembly. Arguments replaced cooperation. Fear replaced confidence. The Concord's leaders gathered in private sessions, desperate for a solution. They needed something to restore faith in the old order. They needed a symbol of unity that would show the galaxy that the Concord still mattered. They needed humanity, Ambassador. Storthelvelken was chosen to deliver the offer. He traveled to Earth itself, landing in the ancient city of Geneva, where humanity's global assembly met. It was his first time on the human homeworld. He found himself moved by its simple beauty. The sky was blue, scattered with white clouds. Trees lined the streets, their leaves dancing in a gentle wind. Humans walked past him without staring, too busy with their own lives to care about an alien visitor. It was so different from the controlled perfection of Concord worlds. Speaker. Helena Vasquez received him in a room overlooking a great lake. She was a tall woman with silver hair and calm eyes, elected by humanity's scattered colonies to represent their collective voice. She welcomed Zorith with courtesy, but no ceremony. Ambassador, you honor us with your visit. Please, sit. Would you like something to drink? Zoroth accepted a cup of something the humans called tea. It was warm and slightly bitter, but not unpleasant. He sipped it slowly, gathering his thoughts. Speaker Vasquez, I have come to offer humanity a place in the Galactic Concord. Helena showed no surprise. We have received such offers before. This is different. Zoroth leaned forward. We are not asking you to join as junior members, bound by rules you did not help create. We are offering you a permanent council seat with full veto power. Your territories would be recognized. Your independence would be guaranteed. We would apologize formally for the Kreth aggression and pay compensation to the families who lost loved ones. He paused, watching her face for any reaction. Speaker, this is unprecedented. No species has ever been offered so much. We are asking you to help us lead the galaxy. Helena was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the lake below, where small boats drifted in the afternoon sun. Ambassador, do you know why we refused your first offer all those years ago? I have studied the question. I believe it was pride, independence, a desire to prove yourselves. Those things, yes, but there was something deeper. Helena turned to face him. When your ships arrived, we had just emerged from the worst century in our history. We had nearly destroyed ourselves through war, greed, and hatred. We looked at our world and saw the damage we had done. She stood and walked to the window. Then you came and told us there was a greater power that would protect us, guide us, keep us safe from our own worst nature. And we were tempted. Truly tempted? It would have been so easy to hand over responsibility, to let someone else make the hard choices. But you refused? We refused because we understood something important. The only way we would ever truly grow was if we faced our challenges ourselves. If we made our own mistakes and learned from them. If we earned our place in the universe, rather than having it given to us. Zorith felt the weight of her words. And now, you have proven yourselves many times over. You have built an empire that rivals the Concord's oldest members. Surely now you can accept what we offer. Helena smiled, but there was sadness in it. Ambassador, accepting your seat would mean accepting your authority. Even with veto power, we would be part of your system. We would owe something to someone other than ourselves. She shook her head. We do not want your power. We never did. We just want to exist on our own terms. And we would invite you to do the same. Zora sat with those words for a long time. He thought about his own species, bound to the Concord for longer than human civilization had existed. He thought about the rules he had followed without question, the traditions he had never challenged, the voice inside him that had always whispered there must be something more. What if the Concord falls? He asked quietly. What if everything we have built collapses into chaos? Then you will build something new. Something better. Lena returned to her seat across from him. Ambassador, the Concord was created because your ancestors were afraid. Afraid of the void. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of being alone. They built a system based on control because they could not imagine any other way. She leaned forward. But there is another way. It is messy and difficult and sometimes painful. But it is free. Humanity chose that path, and we have never regretted it. Zorath returned to Vareth Prime with humanity's answer. The council received the news with anger and despair. Their last hope for saving the old order had failed. But Zorath no longer cared about the old order. He stood before the assembly, 4,000 species watching him with fear and confusion. And he did something that had never been done in the Concord's long history. He called for dissolution. Colleagues, we have held this galaxy together for millions of years. We have accomplished great things. But we have also held back those who might have grown without our guidance. We have demanded conformity when we should have encouraged diversity. We have chosen safety over freedom. His voice rang through the crystal chamber. Humanity showed us a different path. Not because they conquered us or threatened us, but because they simply existed. They proved that a species can stand alone. That independence is not loneliness. That freedom is not chaos. He looked at the empty seat where Earth's flag still hung, faded and dusty. I move that the Galactic Concord be dissolved. Let each species choose its own path. Let those who wish to cooperate form their own alliances, freely and equally. Let us stop pretending that we have all the answers. The debate lasted for 17 days. Voices rose in anger and fell in despair. Ancient species declared that this was madness. Younger ones whispered that it might be wisdom. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance. When the vote was finally called, it was close. But it passed. The Galactic Concord, the greatest civilization in known history, voted itself out of existence. The years that followed were not easy. Without the Concord structure, conflicts arose that had been suppressed for millennia. Trade routes failed and were rebuilt. Some worlds thrived in their new freedom. Others struggled and sought help from neighbors who were once rivals. But something beautiful emerged from the chaos, species that had never spoken. As equals began to forge genuine friendships. Alliances formed not through obligation, but through choice. New ideas spread freely, no longer filtered through Concord approval. The galaxy became messier, stranger, and more alive than it had been in millions of years. Human ambassadors worked alongside former Concord species, not as leaders but as partners. They shared what they had learned from their own difficult history. They helped where they could and stepped back when they were not needed. A decade after the dissolution, a small ceremony was held on Vareth Prime. The old chamber was now a museum, preserved as a reminder of what had been. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see where 4,000 species had once gathered. Ambassador Zorath Velkon, now retired, attended the ceremony. He watched as workers installed a small plaque where Earth's seat had once stood. The seat itself was gone. Donated to a museum on Earth, but the plaque would remain. He read the words that had been carefully chosen by a committee of humans and aliens together. This seat remained empty because humanity understood a truth we forgot. The galaxy does not grant freedom. You claim it. Zorath stood before those words for a long time. He thought about the young diplomat he had once been, full of certainty about the rightness of the Concord. He thought about the centuries he had spent enforcing, rules he had never questioned, and he thought about the small blue world that had looked at the greatest power in the universe and simply said no. A human woman approached him. He recognized her immediately, though years had passed since their first meeting. Captain Ilara Chen, now an ambassador herself. Ambassador Velkon, she said with a warm smile. It is good to see you again. You as well, Captain. Or should I say Ambassador? Ilara laughed. I am retired too. Just Ilara now. They stood together before the plaque, two beings from vastly different worlds who had both lived through the end of one era and the beginning of another. Do you regret it? Ilara asked. Helping to end the Concord? Zorath considered the question carefully. I regret the pain that came after. The conflicts, the uncertainty, the fear, but I do not regret the choice. Looked at her. The Concord kept the galaxy safe for millions of years. But safe is not the same as free. You taught us that. Lara nodded slowly. We taught each other, I think. Humanity needed to see that we were not alone in wanting something more. And the galaxy needed to see that another way was possible. She looked up at the empty space where Earth's flag had once hung. A new banner flew there now, representing all the species that had chosen to work together as equals. The seat stayed empty, she said quietly. But maybe that was the point. Some things matter more than having a place at someone else's table. Azarath smiled, the expression strange on his ancient face. Some things matter more than anything. They walked out of the old chamber together, into a galaxy that was messy and uncertain and wonderfully terrifyingly free, exactly as it should be.